How's it going, everybody? It's Pilot Flame, and we are back with another video, and today we're going to be doing our tactics talk for the Manchester City versus Chelsea game that took place over the weekend. City looking super dominant in that game, and the 3-1 scoreline is actually probably a little bit flattering to Chelsea, as they could have potentially been beaten by more, and City probably deserved a clean sheet in the game, all things considered. If you haven't done so already, make sure to leave a like on the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. It greatly helps out the channel, and also make sure to turn those notification bells on so that you can get the content as soon as it is readily available. Also, make sure to leave a follow over on Twitter and Twitch. It's PilotFlame226 on those platforms. We do our FPL streams over on Twitch, and we'll be doing one tomorrow as well. That's going to be on Tuesday of this week, the 5th of January. And that's going to be at 7 p.m. EST to look at Game Week 18 and potential free hit territory for a lot of FPL teams. So make sure to come check us out over there for that. The VOD will also be up on YouTube as well as soon as the stream is done. But come on and check us out. Come on over in the live stream, and let's have a little chin wag. Let's have a little talk, and let's see what things are happening for the free hit. Also, there's going to be more FPL videos coming out this week as per normal, as now it is not as much of a jam-packed schedule. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So this is how the two lineups set up for Manchester City on the left and Chelsea on the right. Chelsea, I'm going to start off with here, went with a pretty straightforward 4-3-3, kind of sometimes played as a 4-2-3-1 in a sense, with Mount kind of having a bit more of a freer role, Kovacic playing more of a box-to-box, and then N'Golo Kante really taking hold of like the number 6 role, with the license of Chilwell to bomb forward past Pulisic, as well as Azpilicueta playing a bit more of a reserve role, although he did get forward sometimes, and Ziyech kind of tucking in as a wide forward, which is where Mount can kind of freely roam in these spaces and do what he wants. And sometimes Pulisic will pull in on the inside to kind of create kind of a 2, and then Mount can pull out to the side. There's many different ways that Chelsea kind of shaped themselves in this game, although it wasn't very effective because City, which on paper would look like a 4-2-3-1 as well, wasn't exactly that. So you would think Zinchenko, Diaz, Stones, Cancelo, pretty straightforward backline. Gundogan and Rodri been mostly playing in a double pivot. KDB was going to be your standard number 10. Raheem Sterling was going to be your false 9 with Foden on the left and Bernardo Silva on the right, right? Wrong. That's not how they were going to play. They actually ended up matching the positioning of Chelsea's team in most cases and fluctuated these 5 players, Foden, Gundogan, KDB, Sterling, and Bernardo Silva, and moved them all around and caused problems for the likes of N'Golo Kante and Kovacic and the center backs, mainly pulling people out of position. Foden played mostly on the right or the left hand side rather, whereas Bernardo Silva often found himself in spaces in more of a midfield 3, and Rodri being the number 6, and it was actually Sterling who came out to the right hand side, Foden out on this left hand side, and De Bruyne was almost like a false 9, but they kind of played it as like a 4-6-0, very similar to what Spain did when they didn't really have an out-and-out striker after Pauleta retired. That's a blast from the past right there. And basically what they do is they would rotate this position, so sometimes KDB would find himself in this position on the left hand side of midfield 3 with Gundogan playing this role. Sometimes Sterling was in here and Bernardo Silva was out wide, and then it was Gundogan in the midfield 3. Sometimes KDB was out wide left, Foden was in the midfield 3, or Sterling dropped back into this position. There was many different ways they kind of fluctuated around, but for the most part it was KDB in this kind of striker role, with Foden out on the left hand side, Sterling out on the right hand side. And I think this worked out quite well because it gave close proximity to KDB and Gundogan switching places. Gundogan for the first goal did quite well, made a very late run, whereas KDB was a bit more reserved off to the side, and Gundogan was allowed to get in play, and then causing more problems. Gundogan playing a bit more reserved, KDB dropping out to the left hand side with Foden switching into the middle, and it basically caused a lot of headache, a lot of man marking issues, or like, just overall just issues just picking up players, let alone what they were going to do. And it was just one of those things that Chelsea just couldn't handle. So, and the first goal and the second goals in particular exemplify this. The third goal was just, I think it was just basically like just lack of just awareness surrounding the game, no real leadership in it, because it was a very similar goal to how United conceded in the Europa League, or no, Champions League, sorry, versus Istanbul away, where just basic schoolboy defending or how to set up a set piece just caused them to concede that goal. But let's take a look at how Man City was able to get their first goal through İlkay Gündoğan. So this is basically the setup for the first goal. We have Manchester City in possession with Rodri on the ball just over the halfway line. And he's looking for this space over on this side over here. There's a very easy gap to play it in behind Ziyech and kind of isolate Azpilicueta, who is filling in for Reece James as he was injured for this game. Azpilicueta is more of a defensive-minded player, but doesn't necessarily have the legs to keep up with the likes of potentially Zinchenko flying by him, or the likes of Phil Foden, who is quite heavily involved in this goal, as he is on the second goal. So Rodri then plays a pass into Kevin De Bruyne. Kind of makes sense. I think he's the one open. He's picking up the pocket of space in behind. Ziyech isn't able to obviously get back to cover this run. Werner staying up the field, and Pulisic kind of tucking in and kind of occupying this space, maybe track Cancelo. So basically, KDB has passed the forward line here. So the ball comes in, and Kovacic starts to basically go towards him. Conte starts to fade that way. Ziyech starts to close him down. And then what he realizes that it's going to be pretty tight for him to get the ball back, or he's just going to play it back. But he knows that Zinchenko's here on the overlap. So what he does is he actually lets the ball just run straight through to Zinchenko, who makes a great run himself down the flank and has this entire space here to basically deliver the ball. So what happens is after the ball's gone through to De Bruyne, Ziyech then tries to get in towards Zinchenko. Azpilicueta rushes basically towards him, not in time unfortunately, and Foden basically attacks this space in behind Azpilicueta. He could have potentially picked up anywhere in behind here and go online, but basically the danger zone here is this particular area right here, because he can get into this half space. Especially this type of area here would be even more dangerous than what he actually ends up going to, and he's able to basically put in a cross into this area in here, where you have, the likes of Sterling, who's 1v1 on Chilwell. Gundogan has this entire lane to run into, and basically that ends up unfolding here. So basically, Zinchenko goes to look to play the ball in. Foden makes the run into the space. Zuma coming across to cover. The ball ends up coming in towards Phil Foden. Kovacic, who's already been sucked in towards the play. Conte then has to cover for him, trying to address that coming back. Mount comes across. Thiago Silva shifts across. Gundogan then makes the run from behind Mount and from behind Conte, and gets into the top of the box here, where he's able to do a wonderful maneuver as the ball is played in. Foden gets one touch and then plays it out from under his feet. The ball into Foden, by the way, was actually by Zinchenko. Just one touch from out from under his feet, set himself, swung it into Foden. Foden took one touch, swiveled, passed it into Gundogan, who has a perfect, not really like a Cruyff, I guess it's not really a Cruyff term, but basically he takes the ball on his left foot, swivels around, and basically beats Thiago Silva. Zuma's completely out of the play. Conte's nowhere near in position. Mount's not back in position, and then he takes one touch into the box and then ends up firing home past Mendy, who probably could have potentially tipped the ball around the post, but it did have quite a bit of power. And the reason Chilwell couldn't come across and cover here as well is because he was occupied with Raheem Sterling, who had made a run into the box here. Cancelo was starting to push himself forward. Pulisic wasn't back either. But basically, this play it removed Kovacic out of it. It removed Azpilicueta out of it. It removed Zuma out of it, who was marking Foden, and it removed Conte out of it. So basically, three defensive players were basically cut out of the situation. Mount wasn't back out of the other midfielders, which left Gundogan to just swivel one player, which ended up being Thiago Silva, and then he fired past Mendy into the bottom corner. And it was a great strikers type of goal. Basically, a nice little swivel, one touch, bang, in the bottom corner. Could the goalkeeper have done better? Yes. If this was Reece James, would he have potentially gotten up, to Zinchenko a bit quicker? Maybe, you would say. But the dummy by De Bruyne sets it up Kovacic getting sucked into the play, and then Conte having to cover the ground. Doesn't get across in time, even though he is relatively quick, but brilliance by Phil Foden to receive the ball in from Zinchenko. Quick play, Gundogan, quick play, swivel, one touch, bang into the bottom corner. Couldn't have asked for a much more Man City-like goal. Very quick movement. If you think of the total amount of touches it takes to go from just inside halfway, it's one touch for the pass from Rodri through to De Bruyne, who doesn't touch the ball at all. Zinchenko, 2 touches out from under his feet. Foden, 2 touches. Gundogan, 2 touches. That's 2, 4, 6, 7 touches. The ball's in the back of the net from the halfway line. Pretty straightforward. A very good, well-developed goal by Man City. And when they're in full flow, it's very difficult to basically pick up who you're going to be looking at here. And if you look at the situation, Bernardo Silva ends up finding himself in this position, and De Bruyne ends up finding himself in this position by the end of the play. But if you look at the the positioning, you got Foden 1, Gundogan 2, Sterling 3, and then you have the midfield 3 here in a 4-3-3 type of system. Then you got your back 4 along here, and you'll see in the next goal that changes slightly, and in the third goal it's off a set piece. But again, things change slightly. So KDB finding himself in this position rather than in the the where he started off the game in the like kind of false 9 or striker role shows that it caused problems for the likes of Conte and the likes of Kovacic, who just couldn't really, like, they didn't know who they were marking. It's like 1 second they're marking Bernardo Silva, the next second they're marking De Bruyne, and these different players play completely differently. Obviously they have different skill sets. De Bruyne, you don't want to give him time on the ball. Bernardo Silva, if you try to press him too early, he is going to get rid of it really quickly and able to recycle it very well. Foden, same thing. Gundogan, you can't give him time on the ball, and he's a little bit craftier. These sorts of things you have to kind of take into account. But basically every time Chelsea were on defense and didn't have the ball and they had to basically address a player, it was a completely different face every time for Conte and Kovacic, which caused them a lot of problems. And in the first half, it was definitely a masterclass of basically how to play this sort of like multiple midfielders formation. So let's take a look at how Chelsea conceded the second goal and how Man City basically just carved them open in, again, very quick passing for the second goal through Phil Foden. So the second goal here again starts out on this left-hand side. It's a play in transition. The ball ends up finding Zinchenko just over the halfway line, and he is able to receive the ball here. I believe it's a pass from Gundogan or Bernardo Silva. One of these two players are in these two positions. I haven't gone back in the full VOD to check like what these players in this half are basically doing in a sense. Overall, but they're not really important to the play. It's basically a quick transition where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 City players versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Chelsea players plus the goalkeeper. So you would think they should have the numbers advantage and should be able to deal with this quite easily. I mean, Zinchenko's in a very harmless position, even though he has a lot of space here. If Sterling goes and flies into the box, you have 3 defenders that could potentially address him making that run. The only thing that they need to worry about is potentially giving up any space in behind Zuma and Azpilicueta, or potentially giving up, if they drop off, defenders into this area, and then potentially freeing up this area just in front of it for De Bruyne to basically pick a pass and do what he wants. Unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. So Zinchenko gets the ball, plays it into De Bruyne into this space. Conte is trying to basically address him. Zuma comes forward, and then Foden basically makes a run in and around the corner. Azpilicueta tries to follow him, but isn't as quick as Foden. So he plays the ball into the space. Thiago Silva, very experienced defender, knows what he's doing, comes across and basically cuts the ball out, and it ends up spilling out to the left flank here. So we'll just move those players into position. So Thiago Silva comes in here, Azpilicueta comes in here, Foden in here. Zuma is caught like slightly up the pitch and ends up having to get himself back. Conte then moves himself back, but De Bruyne ends up continuing his run basically. So he plays the ball into the space, runs, and then runs in and around in that way. So in this type of like pattern after he makes the pass. So De Bruyne runs into that space, has the ball. By this time, Azpilicueta's dropped off a little bit. Foden has kind of, slowly made his way into the box. Zuma's kind of tracked back and tries to assist Azpilicueta. Thiago Silva's got goal side. Conte's kind of in this space as well. Zuma kind of eventually gets goal side. Chilwell eventually comes across as well. So in this position, and then you have Sterling kind of in this position as well. Cancelo eventually makes his way here. Mount ends up making it to the top of the A team with like Bernardo Silva and Gundogan ending up in this position. Zinchenko kind of stays out here. The rest of these guys are pretty much irrelevant. Gundogan and Bernardo Silva don't really, play a part in terms of what actually goes on. But if you look at the situation here, so this is basically the window of opportunity here for City, really. De Bruyne he starts to make, start to drive his way. Zuma drops off. Azpilicueta drops off. De Bruyne gets into this space here. Thiago Silva's here, Chilwell's here, Conte's here. But this is where Foden is so good and so clever. De Bruyne can he basically has two options. One, try to beat a couple of players, or three options. Beat a couple of players. Two, lay it back to Zinchenko, who could potentially whip a ball into the back post for Raheem Sterling, but you probably think that Mendy or Chilwell is probably going to definitely deal with that. Or three, he has to thread a ball into Foden, who has to make basically a near perfect kind of ghosting run into that space there. So what does he do? He ends up driving with the ball. Zuma drops off. Azpilicueta goes to address him. And Foden basically gets into this space here where he's onside because Chilwell is further back. Thiago Silva's in here. And he basically splits in between the center backs. De Bruyne actually, it looks like he intentionally does this. If you go back and watch it, he passes the ball and intentionally nutmegs Azpilicueta, putting it straight through his legs, straight into Foden. So basically bypasses two players because Zuma can't read it in time. Goes to Foden, who has a one-time shot in towards the near post, and Mendy beaten at his near post again. Could have goalkeeper done better, probably. But again, the quick pass, the nutmeg straight through Azpilicueta's legs. Mendy probably didn't really see that. And then Foden with a one-time shot. Again, very difficult to deal with that kind of quick-oriented passing. But it just shows that City are always first to the ball. Foden getting to the ball on the first goal, and then playing it into Gundogan, who ends up stepping in front of Thiago Silva and making the swivel, getting the advantage there. KDB basically getting his own rebound after the tackle from Thiago Silva. And then he just basically beats Azpilicueta with a little bit of skill, who again isn't necessarily the best defender. Could he have closed him down more slightly? Potentially, because he does let KDB probably dribble 5 or so yards before he, and he's sitting there. You can see him waiting. He sees Foden making the call in the position and then ends up playing it through his legs, and then Foden makes a nice finish at the near post. But overall, again, another goal, quick interchanging of passing. Zinchenko receives the ball, plays it into KDB, who takes a touch from out on his feet, dribbles it, takes another touch, then passes it to Phil Foden, which then tackled, and then he does same 2-3 touches when he's out on the wing. One time into Foden, who takes just a one-time shot, and it ends up going in the back of the net. So overall, Chelsea being done again. And if you look at the positioning by the end of it, Cancelo ends up kind of ending up in this position here, and you would probably think that Diaz is maybe there. Rodri probably ends up in this position. Stones is here. But if you look, you got the back four here. You have the three, which is Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, and Rodri in this case. And now you have Foden, who ends up being, the false nine in the front three here, with KDB out on the left, Sterling still out on the right. But again, changing of positions, causing a bunch of different problems here. If this had been Gundogan, you would say that he'd probably be a little bit safer and probably look to potentially play a pass back for a shot on the edge of the box. He probably wouldn't necessarily swivel onto his left foot. He is right-footed. And it's perfectly for Foden, who can roll it in and then just kind of curve it near post. So I think it was a well-constructed goal, and again, shows why City were able to kind of take their midfielders and rotate them all around and cause problems. Again, splitting the two center backs. Also, Kovacic was upfield, couldn't get back in time. Mount upfield, couldn't get back in time. And Conte's basically left caught in no man's land. And Foden finds a way to get in between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players in there. So, yeah, a very good goal by Man City. But again, you probably ask questions of the defense here. So let's finally take a look at the last goal scored by Kevin De Bruyne off of a Chelsea set piece, which looks a bit naive for how many players they have forward. So this is kind of how the set piece is set up. We have Ziyech here out on the left flank, getting ready to probably whip a delivery of some kind into this kind of shape, as it were. Hopefully with the likes of Zuma coming in here and attacking in this area. Maybe Chilwell coming in and around the back. Maybe Pulisic gets in early and nicks it. Maybe Werner makes a near post run. You know, these sorts of things. Pretty straightforward stuff here. And then you have kind of Kovacic sitting off a little bit. Conte sitting pretty much back on the halfway line here, but everyone from City is back and ready to defend this this set piece. So Ziyech then swings the ball in as per normal, and it ends up getting cleared in and around this area. I believe it ends up being let me just move him out of the way. I think it ends up being Rodri who ends up actually heading the ball out, and the ball ends up going out to Conte in and around this area here. Now, the only person to address him is Raheem Sterling. So basically, the ball gets swung in, and Raheem Sterling kind of floats into this area and then darts towards Conte as he's getting the ball. Now, the ball is bouncing towards Conte, and he has a bunch of different options. I believe he has Azpilicueta and Mount out on this side. He could have potentially sprayed it back out wide for Ziyech, who was unoccupied by Raheem Sterling. He could have taken a touch and then played it back to Mendy, who was in this position around here for the set piece, as goalkeepers would be. But what he ends up doing is he tries to end up hitting it into this space. Now, unfortunately, Werner and Pulisic and Kovacic in this like kind of area, they don't really get involved. KDB ends up addressing it, ends up heading the ball past Conte and Sterling, who's taken up a position in and around like here afterwards, because he's run past Conte because he's just used so much speed to try to get to him. And De Bruyne ends up heading a ball beautifully into the path of Raheem Sterling, who is basically in on goal at this point. Now, credit to Conte and Mendy as well. They end up holding him up and forcing him out wide in this position. So basically, Sterling makes a run and ends up getting pushed out in this sort of way, because Conte ends up getting basically tracking him, getting goal side of him, and then pushing him out and kind of warding him off in this area. And then basically kind of the rest is just a matter of just kind of scrambling and a bit of good fortune by Man City. But the thing that I want to highlight here is not necessarily the goal, because Sterling then ends up shooting and ends up hitting off the post and dropping the KDB, who then ends up slotting it home. My thing is that if we look back at the the situation that basically at hand on the set piece, you have N'Golo Kante here, who's yes, he's there's nobody actually back for City, so it's not like KDB's like hanging here, right? But typically you don't just want one person, because if that one person messes up in any way, shape, or form, they could be the best defender in the world, best defensive midfielder in the world, best attacker in the world, whatever. You don't want just that one person there, because if they make a mistake, just like that, someone like City, who has Raheem Sterling, can just run in behind this entire space. Especially if they press up like they did. So Conte should be just laying back. He should have let the ball come out to him, bounce out. He should have taken it, taken a touch, maybe dribbled it back a little bit, maybe looked to go right, maybe looked to go left, and then either played it back to the goalkeeper or recycled it out wide to Ziyech, who is probably like coming back a little bit. Azpilicueta was probably coming back a little bit. He did have some kind of options there. But the thing is, normally on set pieces is 1-0 players for the opposition that are on the halfway line. So let's say if it's Sterling here, whether it's 1 or 0, you always keep 2 back. Always keep 2. This is even schoolboy stuff. If they have 2 people on the halfway line, you always keep 3 back. That's just the way it is. You always keep a numbers advantage with a minimum of 2. Now, they probably have respect that Conte is one of the best center defensive midfielders in the world, and they think that, well, he's not going to make a mistake, and if he does, he can recover, which he ended up doing. But City's just too good of a team, not to take advantage of that, and that they did. And Sterling almost messed it up. So he could have potentially just finished by just breaking away and just slotting it past Mendy. A little bit lacking on confidence, maybe, but overall, they ended up getting the goal. But again, it's just a bit of schoolboy defending. United had a very similar situation where the only person back on a corner, I believe it was Matic, and basically Matic, if he's Conte as an example, was like ended up being where Conte ended up trying to pass the ball. in this position. And then they had a player who is faster than Matic, although Dembaba isn't much faster, who ended up getting behind. Their player ended up playing it from a similar position where the corner or the set piece was actually headed out from. And they ended up playing him into this space here because he's the last man back and there's nobody to defend all this nice green grass ahead of him, and they ends up being one-on-one with the goalkeeper. Luckily, Conte is faster than Matic is and is able to actually catch up with Raheem Sterling. But again, I still think that you should keep 2 players back. Typically, you keep your smallest players or your quicker players back just because they can recover. Conte did end up recovering, but again, wasn't enough in the end because Raheem Sterling's trickery was able to still get a shot away, end up hitting off the post, dropping to De Bruyne, who had made a run into the box and was pretty much unmarked because they just ended up, like Chelsea ended up just having 4 players just along the 6-yard box pretty much, and as the ball came out, they didn't close it down in time. But yeah, just wanted to highlight that as just kind of something that, you know, potentially you could take into your own games in terms of just defending set pieces. Teams that are very good at moving the ball quickly or like very good on the counter attack. Like I can bet you, like it would be very, very crazy for City not to do this. But they're going to play Manchester United next week in the Carabao Cup. If City get a free kick in this position with Kevin De Bruyne, I could bet good money that you probably see like Rodri and then maybe Cancelo or somebody like that. You know, maybe they're 2 fullbacks sitting in this position because United will have 1 player, maybe 0 players there, but they'll definitely have 2 because they know that Rashford and, you know, these sorts of fast players. Sterling is another one, English international, very quick. Rashford, English international, very quick. Just all of these quick types of players can go from this position to this position in about 2 seconds flat. Well, not exactly, but they're very, very quick and can get in behind. So they want to make sure they have enough cover in defensive areas, and getting burnt on the counterattack from your own set piece just doesn't feel good. And I think it was a bit naive for Chelsea to defend in that sort of way. And I don't think Frank Lampard would have set them up in that way. I think it was just a mental lapse by the Chelsea players after going 2-0 down so quickly. But yeah, that's going to do it for the tactics review. And yeah, was a very interesting game. Very good masterclass by Pep Guardiola to show how much of a better manager he is than Lampard. And yeah, Lampard and Chelsea have a lot of work to do, and Pep Guardiola's team seems to be gathering some steam, so we need to take a watch out for them in future tactics talks. And that's going to do it for this week's edition of Tactics Talk. Make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and turn those notification bells on so that you can get the content as soon as it is readily available. And drop us a follow over on Twitter and Twitch. It's PilotFlame226 on those platforms, and we will be doing an FPL stream over on Twitch tomorrow, 7 p.m. EST. That is the 5th of January at 7 p.m. EST to discuss how we did in Gameweek 17. Spoiler, it's another red arrow, unfortunately, for me. And it's headaches going into Game Week 18, as potentially we're going to be looking at free hit chips and all that sort of stuff. And also make sure to check out the videos that are going to be coming out. I did put a bulletin over on YouTube and Twitter for what videos are going to be coming out all the way up until next week Monday. So make sure to check those out over on the YouTube channel, as well as the VOD for the Twitch streams will go up after these streams are done over on Twitch for our FPL previews and deadline streams. Thanks for watching, and until the next one, take care.